Members, let's resume our meeting. Item number 4, review on the regulation of preservatives and antioxidants in food. The administration is with us. I'd like to invite the Undersecretary to brief us on the paper, and members who wish to speak may wish to press the button later on. Madam Chair, in his policy address, the policy measures refer to the review and update by phases of food safety legislation relating to additives in food to enhance food safety. The CFS Center for Food Safety has already embarked on the work. The first area of work is the review of the preservatives in food regulation, and this is to regulate the preservatives and antioxidants in food. We have a positive list approach to make sure that the food imported, manufactured for sale and sold can only be the items on the list, and there is an MPL, and there are 32 items at the moment, and there are 900 MPLs, the maximum permitted level for the additives pairs. And we are using the Codex as the backbone, and the Codex is formed by the FAO and the WHO. The standard is regarded as the most important international standard for reference. We have also included the mainland New Zealand, Singapore standards. We have regard to all these different standards regarding food safety. This is to make sure that the standards that we adopt is in alignment with the international standard. Not only are we able to ensure food safety, it will also facilitate international trade. In this amendment, we included more preservatives and additives. So there are going to be, instead of 32, we're going to increase the number to 58. And for the pairs, we increase from 900 to 2,000. For the food business, this would provide more specific reference to go by, and we also have more choices to be made. For the consumers, in terms of the MPLs, all of them have been evaluated by international standard, and they are assessed to be not causing any detrimental effect to human health, and this will provide better protection to the members of the public. In the middle part of the year, we're going to be conducting the consultation. In 2023, end of, and 2024, early part of, we'll be introducing the legislation amendment to the LegCo. And now I defer to my colleague to make a presentation using PowerPoints to brief members on further details. Thank you. Thanks very much. The Undersecretary has already referred to the details, some of the details. I'll be skipping some of them in the PowerPoint. First, about the preservatives and antioxidants. In food processing, we do need to have the preservatives and antioxidants to make sure that in terms of the processing, the transportation, and the whole journey will be safe, and the food will be kept in good conditions. And all these elements are ways to ensure food safety. Preservatives is to prevent the growth of microorganisms and also to protect food against deterioration caused by microorganisms. And antioxidants are there to protect food against deterioration by oxidation. As the Undersecretary said, under CAP 132BD, preservatives in food regulation, we have a positive list there. So all the preservatives, we can only use the preservatives in the positive list. Anything outside the list will not be allowed. This is the most important element under Cap 132BD. As the Undersecretary said a moment ago, we are basing on the Codex Commission as the backbone. Let me give members further information about this. The FAO and the WHO back in 1963 set up the Codex. 188 member countries and one organization, that's the EU, were part of the Codex, and the standards are put together by consultation with the member states. As to the standard, they are there to ensure public health and also to ensure fair food trade. And this is also the organization to lay down the standard on the WTO. And this is a very important standard for reference by the international community. The Codex, we have the Codex for food additives. And the mainland is the presiding nation since 2007, and the chairman is actually a representative of China. It has also put together the standards for additives for endorsement by Codex. The key thing is the JECFA has been thoroughly assessed. The FAO and WHO represent the organization that would be jointly putting together the JEFA that would be assessing all the situation.
After assessment, if the additives are will not pose hazard to health of consumers, then they can be added to the list. As mentioned, the proposed amendment is based on the Codex standards as the backbone. And we have also taken reference from mainland and other food trading partners. And we adopt some standards of the mainland as well. There are three major areas of amendment. First, to update definitions of preservatives and antioxidants. Second, to update the list of permitted preservatives or antioxidants in the positive list. And we will also update the maximum permitted list of the permitted preservatives and antioxidants. We also add a GMP list, which I will elaborate later on. So as for the definition of the preservative, for this definition, we've taken reference from the Codex standards on preservative and the prevailing legislation. The proposed definition is this. The preservative means any substance not normally consumed as food by itself, nor normally used as a typical ingredient of the food, which is added to or used in or on food at any stage of the food processing to prolong its shelf life by protecting against deterioration caused by microorganisms, but does not include the following items. Items A to F are not included in the prevailing legislation. The major difference compared to the existing legislation, the list of exclusion is quite long and is set out in the annex. So for the items not included, if they are preservative, then we will adopt the standards by the Codex, and we will include them in the proposed list. So the number of permitted preservatives will increase, such that consumers and the food trade have more choices. As for antioxidant, it means any substance not normally consumed. As for vitamins and minerals, they fall under the definition of preservative as well. We have taken reference from the definition of the Codex and other legislation relating to preservative. or food additives. As for antioxidant, we have taken reference from Codex. We propose that the definition of antioxidant to be any of substance not normally consumed as food by itself nor normally used as a typical ingredient of the food which is added to or used in or on food at any stage of food processing to prolong its shelf life by protecting against deterioration caused by oxidation, but does not include, as with the case with preservative, any vitamins and minerals added to food as nutrients. We have taken reference from the Codex standards for formulating this definition. Under the current definition, the antioxidant does not include a series of antioxidants. So we propose to increase antioxidants that is included in the Codex standards. So we have expanded the scope of the definition of antioxidants. Our next proposed amendment is to update the list of permitted preservatives or antioxidants in the positive list. Currently, there are 32 preservatives or antioxidants under CAP 132 BD. We will add 29 of them that are the food additives that are not covered under existing definition. So we will add 29 food additives. Apart from that, we will remove 3 permitted food additives under the current CAP 132 BD that are no longer in use. So the total number of food additives that are preservatives and antioxidants will become 58. I would like to stress this. All the newly added preservatives and antioxidants have been stringently assessed by the JEFFA and will not pose any health hazard to consumers. So we put safety first, as always. So we take reference from the evaluation result of the JEFFA and also Codex to formulate this 58 food additives. We propose to remove 3 food additives that are copper carbonate, diphenyl, and formic acid. Although they are safe, they are already replaced by other food additives. And these 3 additives are not included in the Codex. So we propose these 3 additives be removed. Third, we update the maximum permitted limits of the permitted preservatives and antioxidants. We also use the Codex standards as our backbone, supplemented by the practice of mainland and other major food trading partners. To put it simply, under the existing legislation, there are 900 food additive and food pairs. As the arrow is pointed to, in the third column, there is a maximum permitted limit. This is 800. This is what we call food pair, to pair the canned food to the benzoic acid. This is an additive food pair. There are 900 of them currently, and it will become 2,000 with the amended legislation. As for food category system, we have updated that according to the Codex standards. Apart from updating the MPLs of the permitted preservatives and antioxidants, we also propose a GMP list. So what is this? We have taken reference also from the Codex standards. There are a series of additives and antioxidants that do not pose health hazards, and they can be used in food at quantum stages level, and that the Codex is of the view that these safe additives should not be denoted by numerics or maximum permitted levels. So under this GMP, there are 24 preservatives or antioxidants. Among them, there are a lot of preservatives and antioxidants that are not regulated currently. We have taken reference from Codex and other places that have this GMP list. We would like to formulate this list for the trade to follow. For food pairs under the GMP, there are specific limits for particular food groups. So we have formulated a list for the sector to follow. Our proposal has been assessed by the Expert Committee on Food Safety. They, in general, support our proposal. As the Undersecretary has said, we come to the panel today to consult members' view, and then we will conduct a public consultation. So from mid-2023, we will have a 3-month public consultation period to collect views from the stakeholders. Thank you, Controller. Now I pass the floor to members because it involves a legislative proposal, so members that are not a part of the panel can join the meeting as well. 3 minutes per member, question and answer included. Chen Ying, Xiu Kao Fai, Tommy Cheng, Yang Wen-ki, Tony Chen, and Stephen Ho. Mr. Chen Ying, please. Thank you. To formulate these standards, have you evaluated the food on the market and how many of them do not fulfill the requirements? And have you communicated with the food manufacturers or suppliers? Next, on consumer education. I think most of them do not understand the content of the presentation just now. For consumers, they concern about what impact it costs to them. Another thing, for the last amendment, 2 years a 2-year of transitional period was given to the trade, and now we have only 18 months of transitional period. What is the reason for that? Is it because that you are very confident? I will allow 4 minutes, question and answer. I will give a holistic response, and then I will invite the controller to supplement. Codex had communication with the trade. When we were formulating these proposals, we also consulted the trade, and we will have a public consultation period. And we will have meetings with the trade. If there is any comments or view, they can give us for consideration. Perhaps I invite the controller to supplement. Thank you. Apart from what Undersecretary has said, the CFA has a food monitoring mechanism. We will compare the statistics that we gather with the proposed standards. We will review the relevant food on the market with our proposed standards. So have you done it? We have done it. Currently, under the monitoring mechanism, we have looked at the results of the additives in the food on the market by using the proposed standards, but not the existing standards. So after reviewing the food with the proposed standards, is it that most of the food has fulfilled the requirements and that only some small portion of it does not fulfill the requirements? How do we educate the public about that, such that consumers can pay special attention? Has the administration done similar work of publicity? Public education is very important. Under our food monitoring mechanism for food samples that is unsatisfactory, we promulgate the results such that people know that what kind of food is unsatisfactory. And we will step up our work in this regard. We also consult the stakeholders, the trade, as well as the public. We have some technical meetings with the trade to detail the technical issues. We will continue to work on that. Controller, can you answer this question? Will it be the case that a large portion of the food do not pass the proposed standards? When we look at the statistics from the monitoring mechanism or results, most of the food do pass the test. I think the member was asking about the proposed amendment that we proposed 2 years ago. We had 2-year transitional period because of COVID, so we allowed for a longer transitional period. Now we have returned to normalcy, so we propose a 18-month transitional period, and we will look at the response from the trade during the public consultation period. Next, Mr. Siu Ka-fai. Thank you. On review of preservatives and antioxidants, the administration had a meeting with me and Mr. Tommy Cheng, detailing what kind of food will be involved or affected. As far as I understand, it involves preservatives sprayed on the surface of the fruit, and there are some antioxidants in cream. So these are the food that will be affected. As for seafood, there are a lot of dried seafood on the market, and there may be preservatives sprayed on them as well. So Mr. Tommy Cheng and I had a meeting with the administration along with the trade. I have asked some union of the wine and seafood to join me in the meeting because they are most familiar with the matter. So I would like to thank the administration for arranging the meeting. Controller Dr. Wong was there as well. In the meeting, leaders in the trade had posed question immediately in the meeting, and I learned in the meeting that there will not be significant impact cost. I had gained some information, and the trade has consulted their members as to what kind of food would be affected under the proposed legislative amendment. So I would like to thank them for arranging the meeting.
I think Mr. Ronald Chen has got a point there. Last time, in the previous exercise, you've given a specific time frame, like 24 months, and you might wish to consider allowing 18 months for the transitional period. And I do hope that you will certainly consider this. And myself and Mr. Tommy Cheng are acting as a bridge to pass on the updates. There would be a consultation period for 3 months, and the trade is being updated. I will certainly keep you updated on this. Right, this is only a comment. Care to respond? No? Mr. Tommy Cheng, please. Madam Chair, very simply, I've been councillor for so many years. Even before I was a member of the Urban Council, I wouldn't raise an objection to any move to update the preservatives and antioxidants. But there are 2 things I hope that the administration would bear in mind. First, we should not go beyond codex. A moment ago, the CFS mentioned that mainly they fall within codex, and I hope that you're not really straying beyond the scope of codex. Second, I keep telling the administration that whatever we do, we should not go beyond the scope of the mainland. They have 1 billion people, and this is a market for a population of 1 billion, and we have 7 million. If we go beyond what is needed by the mainland, then we would be left behind in the overall context. This is really something I am concerned about. Like the nutrition labeling saga, that caused a lot of trouble. And the same can be said about the trans fat. In Australia, they have a definition for trans fat, and there is another standard for the US. I don't think you can pick and choose. But the officials didn't do it the right way. They created something of their own, like trans fat. They couch the legislation in a specific way, and they have to stick the label in accordance with our requirements before the products can be shipped to Hong Kong. I don't think you could assume that people can't understand the US or Australian standards. I hope that the administration can strike a balance while we are trying to maintain good health for the public. We should also balance this against any detrimental impact. It's okay to allow them longer time. I mean, they may need to offload the inventory, and they will need to import the products in accordance with their labeling, and people might be running short of supply, and there's a bit of a gap there. And I'm sure you've heard me saying this loads of time. And number one, we should not exceed the mainland standard. In some cases, you're more stringent than that of the mainland. And I don't think you should be going beyond the codex parameters either. Under Secretary, right? 18 months and versus 24 months. I've heard the views of members and also the trade. There will be a consultation. We certainly have some consideration of that. Second, let me brief members on the flow of work in this exercise. In this amendment exercise, we're having regard to the Codex the GSFA, Codex General Standard for Food Additives. 80% of them are in line with the Codex standards. Now, if there are no standards per se on the Codex, we would have regard to the mainland and other jurisdictions. In the mainland, they also have the GSFA, and we also have regard to the dietary habits in Hong Kong as well. So we do have regard to the mainland standard, and they take up about 17% of the overall scheme of things. For the minority, we would review the situation there. And after consolidation of the 37 pairs, about 20 are already within the standards under the local law, and this has been complied with by the trade. We have had a reality check, and we believe that there will not be any significant impact on the trade because this has been serving us well. Now, there are the remaining dozen or so, as the commissioner said. We've had a reality check there. In the course of consultation, we would listen to public views. We have followed the Codex and also the mainland standard, And we also analyzed the situation and had some reality check. During the consultation period, we will bring the trade up to date on the situation. I'm sure that they would find it easy to adapt to the situation. Mr. CHENG, Madam Chair, for public health, I would support the regulation of preservatives and antioxidants. I don't think anybody would raise an objection to that. Now, there is also a mention of the wine or spirits. There are many more wine products. Multi ice cream is very much a popular product. You refer to the MPL. You would not allow them if they exceed the prescribed MPL. I'm not sure whether you regard them as preservatives. They may add multi-spirit into the ice cream. How are you going to define that? Would you allow that to be sold? If you prohibit this, you will be limiting the creative use of spirits. There are many preserved food that will be rolled out, and there are certain processed food like dumpling with liqueur inside that they may use the spirit inside the dumpling. Do you regard that as some preservative or what? So when you consider the situation, would you do it in a way that will not be stifling the development of creative food products? Other than multi ice cream, there may be other kinds of food products that would have multi in them. Would this be included under your current definition? I defer to my colleague on this, the controller. Now, for whether it is preservatives or antioxidants, I think we have to look at the usage. Controller. Now, for spirits, they are not included in the list of preservatives. They're not. So under the current legislation, they're not included. But if they are part of the ingredients, for ice cream, if there is some liqueur, there is the element of spirit or wine, they have to specify that. And a supplement? No? Mr. Tony J. Right, looking at the clock, let me extend the meeting by 15 minutes. We're supposed to end the meeting by 4:30. Mr. Tony J. I'd like to find out more about Para 6. And you have the 3 items there in terms of the legislative amendments. Now, with these changes, how often do you conduct these kind of exercises? Is it the case that every time you make the changes, you have to go down the legislative path? And it is said that some products might be adversely affected. So please explain a little bit further there. Second, and there is a footnote there about the quantum status. It means that it will not be detrimental to public health, and it means no quantitative limit is specified for the use of food additive. Now, there is the MPL you mentioned a moment ago. I mean, have you spelled that out here? When the expert panel assesses this, there must be some criteria. I hope that there would be some clarification there. There was a time when the Consumer Council tested the products, and they would say that they would urge people not to consume a lot of these food products because they are detrimental to human health. Now, many a time, these products are in line with the European Union standards. And there is conflicting messaging there, and people find it really confusing. There are certain baby formulas that are in line with the requirements, but somehow the Consumer Council has a different messaging. So when it comes to the quantum status, does the administration communicate with the Consumer Council there? So with this kind of conflicting messaging, people may get the impression that the government is not doing a good enough job in gatekeeping. And I hope that you will clarify the situation. The Consumer Council may be giving some narratives that are in conflict with that of the administration. And this will not be good for Hong Kong at all. Thank you.
Undersecretary, please. Perhaps talk about the time, and the controller can talk about the quantum status and Consumer Council issue. We have been looking at the latest development in the international community, and we regularly revise the safety standards to keep them in line with the international ones. As we all understand, the scope of food safety is very wide, one of which is to revise the legislative standards, having taken into account the international practice and the local dietary habits, such that the two can be aligned. We conduct legislative amendment from time to time. Apart from the preservatives and antioxidants, we conduct legislative amendments on coloring matters, for example, as well. So we conduct legislative amendments from time to time when necessary. I will not go into how many legislative amendments we have conducted between 2010 and 2021. I will defer to the controller to talk about the quantum status and Consumer Council issue. Do we review 132BD regularly? We do. If necessary, we will conduct legislative amendment. On the GMP additive standards, it has been reviewed by the JEFA. And these preservatives and antioxidants are safe for use. So even if they are under the GMP list, it does not mean that they are safe for use regardless. It means that it is the lowest quantity that can be used. Because there are additives and preservatives, if they are added excessively to food, it changes the taste of it. It may become sour or otherwise. So the manufacturer would take a look at the actual situation. In Annex 3 of the papers, there is a list of GMP. There is certain food categories where we have maximum permitted limits for GMP additives. As for the Consumer Council issue, we do have close liaison with the Council, and in all the articles that they publish, they include views from the Center for Food Safety. We will detail if the testing is in line with the legislative standards. If it does, then we will stress that although a certain level of preservatives or additives are included, is not above the safety limit. Chairs, sometimes the Consumer Council publish reports with the headlines of some kind of food posing health hazards to consumers, I think it may affect the gatekeeping role of the government. I think that we should work on that. Because sometimes members of the public may not read the entire report promulgated by the Consumer Council, and it may affect the image of the government. Undersecretary, please pay attention to this. Next, Mr. Stephen Ho. I am a former member of the Consumer Council. I understand what Mr. Tony Che said. Sometimes, well, most of the times, Consumer Council publishes reports that are for the benefit of the people. They may say that 3 cups of tea is too much. I think that people should spend more time to understand the reports given by the Consumer Council and the administration. During the last legislative amendment on mercury, compared with that, now we have a GMP list. Looking at the permitted list, we are allowing more choices for the sector because time has changed. We have more technology that allows for new additives that pose less impact on people's health. That is why we allow more additives to be added to food that falls under the permitted list. So we can add more ingredients to food. So this report and proposal is in line with the latest development. I would like to draw our attention to this on the expert committee on food additives. In the PowerPoint slides, there's a mention of the composition of the expert committee: academics, professionals, food experts, consumer representatives, so a bunch of experts and trade members. I have to look online before I can identify who these experts are. I think that the administration should invite members from the Legislative Council to look at the proposals before the committee is established. For example, you mentioned that you have had a lot of meetings already, but we are not notified. If you have some breakthrough, I think that you should inform us earlier. For example, this time you're adding this GMP list, we can provide you with some comments and suggestions. Lastly, I think that in the legislation papers and the presentation given by the administration, you should use words that are simpler and that people can understand. Should we exceed the standards of our country? Food safety is one of the most important topics or areas where we should integrate into our country's development. Comparing our standards with the mainland standards, I've printed the list. Some additives or standards are not regulated under the relevant legislation in the mainland. I think that you should detail verbally, perhaps in your presentation, why we are including more additives than our country. Or is it because that the mainland will include these additives in the future and we're just one step ahead? A simple response will do. Thank you. Thank you. I will answer the question in 2 parts. First, regarding the expert committee on food safety, Apart from experts, some consumers are also members of the committee. As for your second question, we use Codex as our backbone. For additives that are outside the Codex, we will look at our local dietary habits as well. Member is correct in saying that some additives are in the Codex but not in the mainland standards. So apart from taking reference from the Codex updates, under our prevailing legislation, there are some additives that are not regulated in the mainland standards. As Mr. Ho has mentioned, we will have closer liaison with our mainland counterparts and learn from them. Anything to add, members? I think Mr. Ho suggested that you be giving the presentation in simpler wordings. If there's no further comments, then we move on to the last item, AOB. If there is none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.